We don't do the Pledge of Allegiance for this one, do we?
We do.
We do?
I didn't know you guys were gonna wait for me.
Mosquito control.
Yeah.
As Brian put it.
You have
All
to do
right,
it.
good afternoon and welcome to the April 12th Facilities Improvement Meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, with it being the beginning of a new election cycle, I suppose, or session, I think we should go around and figure out who everybody is and who's going to be joining us for different board representation seats and whatnot. So, committee membership, I guess I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike. And
Sure. So the school board appointed as committee reps you, Heidi Ames, as the chair, and you've been on the committee in the past.
I have, yep.
And then reappointed Tina Harrison to continue on with the facility improvement. We also, at the meeting, Peter Plansky indicated that he was going to try to attend as many meetings as possible. So Peter was added to the invite because of that interest. From the schools, Jen is back representing the middle school, Dan is back representing the elementary school, and I have invited Jake to join us. To be honest, we hadn't had a lot of conversation with Jake about this committee because there's not a lot going on at Campbell, but now the question that's come forward does impact Campbell, so we need to make sure that Jake is involved going forward. Doug and I are back representing the central office, and if there are questions that need to be answered, we're able to do that. The select board have appointed Kevin Lynch to be on this committee, so I took Steve Weber off the invite list because Steve was serving as the select board rep and replaced him with Kevin. We continue to have Dave Ely and Kyle Barker as the two architects that we're working most closely with involved. On the TV today is Dave Ross, and so Dave is our facilities director, and he also needs to be involved. And we'll invite additional folks as needed. So, and then the other person that was invited and is not here is JD Sun from the budget committee. And I think JD was serving as a community rep and as a budget committee rep also. So, not exactly sure the capacity, but topic number one on the agenda today is.
You forgot one.
you forgot.
Oh, I forgot Brian Burke. Sorry, Brian. I've done everybody at the table and missed the guy in the red shirts. So sorry. But Brian is representing from the community and the budget committee also, I assume. So.
Budget committee rep.
Excellent. So the first topic was discussing whether we need to get more community members involved. And I'm just curious what the committee thinks in terms of trying to broaden this out because facilities improvement, we've made a lot of headway. We'll be wrapping up the LMS project. The GMS project will continue to be a key one going forward. So I'm just curious what people think about expanding the membership.
Certainly don't have any objection to it. But I haven't exactly had people knocking down the door expressing interest either.
I thought we had talked last year about this and reaching out to some kind of key community members to see if they'd want to get involved. I don't know about their formal membership or anything like that, but I know some people are going to have some conversations about getting certain people involved, so I just don't know if we ever close the loop on that. So I think as a committee, we had discussed it at least and seemed to want to move forward.
I guess my biggest question would be, are we going to appoint those individuals or are we just going to put it out there? What I'm concerned about is you may get some individuals who volunteer for it, who don't have the background as far as what we do, and we just like slow the process down tremendously. You know, there are some individuals that I know have been involved as far as at the meetings we presented, who have the background of what we've already discussed or have been discussing.
I would think they should be appointed. I mean, this is a school board committee, right? I would think they should be appointed would be my, rather than just a volunteer or just come when you choose to come. If you're interested in making the commitment to attend regularly and become up to speed on facilities issues for the district, I think we would want them to do that, but I don't think it should be necessarily drop in. Audience, obviously, but in terms of participation and being on the committee,
I think it'd be nice too if we can get a teacher from GMS and a teacher from LMS.
yeah.
They get the perspective of the buildings. I mean, I know the principals are here, but I mean, it might be nice too, get the teacher side of it.
We have lived construction. I said, we have lived construction for,
Eager to be done.
we're eager to be done. I think that's what I might have just put on my final school board report for April is we're very excited to have nothing to report for construction right now. I'm sure that someone would be willing to. I just, as far as a consistent member, I'm not sure. That's a big ask when they have so many things on their plate already. I'm not saying I wouldn't want to include teachers.
No, but it's
I
no
think
different than any other resident. I mean, it'd be nice if we go even, a step further, it'd be a resident that's a teacher in that school. Who has the need for the buy-in as much as anyone else.
Dan, are you willing to ask if there's somebody who would be interested in serving from GMS in particular? Because that's the project that's gonna get the most airtime going forward, I think, so, and if you get a volunteer, let us know that.
Absolutely.
We can bring it forward, we can bring it back to the board, and then I guess, we're on TV now, so if we just publicly, if there's somebody out there with an interest, send an email into the board, expressing that interest. So you
Yeah.
can send it to schoolboard@litchfieldsd.org, and we'll take that, and then I think if we don't, we should reach out to some people who have also in the past had opinions about the project and try to figure out, how to make sure that we've got good representation going forward, so.
Absolutely.
Is there a, targeted number? Are we looking for one community rep or,
Let's see what we get for interest. On some level, I'm thinking you got two board members who are also community reps. You've got two budget committee people who are community reps, so, and a select board member. So it's not like we're totally hurting, but I think,
yeah. I don't think it'd be a bad exercise to kind of, I think, almost spell it out, like, put the facilities improvement committee and then membership, because I watched the school board and I watched budget committee, so I'm not sure, are there two members or is there one and a backup?
One in the backup.
One and a back, so what's the actual makeup of the committee? Is it one budget committee and then is it one school board in the back, and then spell it out, so then you'd have one community member, two, and then we just kind of have, it's not about the people so much as opposed to the role, the positions,
Yeah.
Last year we had two, and last year school had two, and both
Yeah.
decided to scale back and just have one representative and one backup.
Yeah.
to that end, I'll look to see, I don't remember if we did the Facilities Improvement Committee as one of the committees. We should have, but I'll make sure that that's there, and then the committee membership should be spelled out there.
Yeah, and then
On that grid that.
On the grid?
Yeah.
Okay.
and then it's spelled out that Brian and JD aren't on the committee. There's one budget committee, and on any meeting, it can be filled by either Brian or JD, same thing with the school board.
It's a good suggestion, Dan. And I think the other thing is if we get to voting on stuff, we want to make sure we know who.
Who are voting members, who are non-voting members, yeah.
Yep.
And based on your last school board meeting, I would think that, you said that the majority is gonna be GMS. It sounded like that at least in the beginning, there's gonna be a lot of communication of all three schools.
Well, actually, Brian, thank you for that, because maybe that's a reason why we want a teacher from LMS
And Campbell.
and Campbell, now that I think about it, because if, depending on where the consolidation goes, we may want to make sure that we have that teacher voice involved. Okay, so, yes, Jen, you're on to find somebody if you can.
I will do my best.
Thank you.
All right, so that's committee membership, LMS project updates.
So we had a meeting today with North Branch. So we, right now, are meeting with North Branch once a month. The meeting lasted a little over an hour. And it's just making sure that we're kind of in between the work that was completed prior to February vacation, and then the summer work, which will complete the project. So we were meeting to go over details there, and just to coordinate any missing pieces that are there. So let me hit highlights from that. North Ranch is ready to go to stage back on campus on Monday, June 19th, because that's when we will be, done for the summer, and they will be back and getting everything all set up and going. To save on some expense, we're not gonna set the trailers all back up in the yard. They will stage out of the building for the month and a half or so that it takes to do it. So Jen's dedicated the conference room off the main lobby so that they can operate out of there and oversee the work, which will primarily be the cafeteria and the kitchen. That's really the bulk of the work that needs to be done. So, let's see, what else?
LMS.
So that's the bulk of the work as far as North Branch, and then the solar will be happening this summer as well. So between the two, there'll be times when LMS does not have power, as they redo some of the switches as well as get the solar up and running. So for that reason, I think, LMS is planning on not really being around too much this summer and doing more work out of the high school at times.
We'll combine, so we'll relocate in the weeks when North Branch is excellent with scheduling and letting us know when those things are coming up. So we plan on being at LMS as much as we can, but when there is no power, obviously we would transition the office over to Campbell. And for that reason, we won't have summer school in our building this summer again.
So our goal, though, is to get the middle school up and running a week or so before the kids come back, so they can just kind of have a typical school year.
A normal start.
On the solar array, I am getting a meeting set up between Kay and her company that's installing the array, and the electricians. So we just need to make sure that everything is fully understood so that it can be integrated back into the electrical area. And there were some questions that we just need everybody in the same space, virtual space, to talk and make sure that we have everything set. So I'm going to try to have a meeting early next week, and then hopefully that will keep us on track with the solar.
Are all the components here?
No. So Dave handled 2 pallets worth of materials that were delivered to the middle school. So those are secured in the electrical area. But like all the solar arrays, those have not arrived yet. So when they come in, I think Kay's intent is to store them in storage units until they are ready
She's
to be
going to
put
have
up.
her own Connex.
Connex
out back,
boxes.
yeah.
Yep.
So we have all the inverters.
And the footings too, right? The pads for the walkways?
Dave, on the corner above the electrical, the old boiler room,
Yep.
there are some cardboard boxes up there, and I think those are the foot pads for the roof. Is that accurate?
Okay, I know we have boxes and boxes upon boxes of filters, the brand new filters. I don't know about the roof pads. I have to double check.
Okay.
I think they're the roof pads.
They're on the roof, and so I assumed we wouldn't have filters out in the rain,
Oh,
but
okay.
maybe
I'm
not.
sorry. No, I'll double check.
I'll go climb a ladder after this meeting. I'm going
All right.
back up there. I'm going to go see.
What else about the LMS project?
Our sign at the corner, which is lovely, beautiful, was
And not
missing.
there.
You might have noticed it's missing this week. It was missing a component that was really important for a ground level middle school sign. And that is a locking panel over the letters so that they could not be rearranged into creative spelling and creative words. So they are just adding that one clear panel across the front of both sides that locks so that we can lock those letters in when we need to put up the messages, and that should be back on Friday, and then we can finally start to put messages out there.
Wow, a lock is a key component.
A
There you
lock
go.
is a key component. I did not want to wish anybody any messages that could be
Good call.
translated into anything middle schoolers would never write.
Never.
And there's ongoing dialogue still with Mitsubishi about the unit that caused all the headaches between December and March until it got replaced. And so Doug and I are actively following up on trying to figure out where that landed. It did result in additional labor charges at this point, and we are strongly advocating to get that resolved. So we'll keep you posted as that plugs ahead. Anything else?
No, I think that's good.
The lift, we're still working on.
So the lift, we got communication back from the lift installer that he's open to a phone call. We just haven't connected on the phone yet, so we'll keep working on that. But we were trying to get that lift operational. And then Dave has had ongoing dialogue with the trash company regarding the trash enclosure and dumpster. And so that's another issue that we're still trying to get resolved. So all these little pieces that are just not finalized
They
yet.
having trouble pushing it in all the way?
There's concern about that, and I think it's that, in the past, they just pulled up and plunked it back down wherever, and now it's more precision involved in that. You know, opening a door.
Tearing up the walkway as well, because they're going across the dirt by where that nice new concrete slab is, and they're tearing up the road. I mean, right now, everything's torn up. If you've driven around LMS, where the construction trailers were, it's our sand pit. But once we get that back to grass, we'd like to keep it grass, have it as a space kids can use and teachers can use, and be nice.
The other piece, so everybody's aware, is working with Dick Henry to produce a really nice, at this point, I want to have a nice one-page handout that describes all the work that we got done and what the energy goals were and what we've been able to accomplish with it. So I'm planning to host the South Central Superintendents. We'll meet at LMS a week from Friday, and I want to have something I can hand them to say, these were our goals and here's what we accomplished with it. So working to get something pulled together. And then there may be, a more substantial, 4 to 5 page document for those who want to get deeper into the details. But we should at least have a one-pager that we can give to the public and help them to understand. The numbers are pretty impressive. I know, the attention went to the overall cost of the project, but the overall savings are still there, and there's substantial savings that I think we need to continue to remind people that this will pay for itself and then some, even with the cost overruns that we experience. There will be substantial savings down the road.
I think the other thing that we didn't mention was we had a meeting last week. Was it last week?
Last Friday.
Last Friday with the mechanical and how to arrange and coordinate the heating and climate control. And I think that will be very interesting to see. This hot stretch this week is going to be our first chance to test it out and to see how that works to keep the building at a comfortable level for working and learning.
Well, we keep talking about the heat savings that we're going to have with heat pumps, but they are climate control, so they will help with offsetting the heat of summer also. So it's not air conditioning, but it is a climate control and a humidity control that should make that building much more comfortable throughout the year. So I'm glad that you said that. I mean, first of all, who would expect 80 degrees in April? But here we are. And it'll be nice to test that out.
Mm-hmm. One of the things we'll have to make sure we do is keep all the windows closed and truly test out how that works. Because once you open one window, as you know, in your house, I tell my kids we're not heating the outside, or we're not cooling the outside, or we're not conditioning the outside, just keeping that locked down to keep that envelope buttoned up.
And it will take a shift in mindset for staff. I mean, a warm day, we open the window. That's what we've always done, except we don't have to now. So we just have to kind of stay the course and tweak the system. The other one too, we didn't bring this up today, but the lighting control people,
This
basically
summer.
they dictate when they're gonna come and get all the lighting done. And they're coming the first week of August, which,
August.
and I think August 4th is the day that they're gonna do the training for us, so, you know, the lights have not yet been, finalized. You can look up and see like a really, soft white light and then a bright white light. They just have to get it all fine-tuned and adjusted and turn it over to us, so it won't be until next year at this point.
And I think one of the reasons they're waiting to do that, from what we've been told by Liberty, is that it is important to have the whole system up and running in order to transition all of those controls at the same time. So because the cafeteria and the kitchen right now are still on the old lighting system, once we shift those lights over in the summertime, that will allow us to get everything up and running, to be able to turn it down to 50% or 25% or whatever is needed in the classroom environment or the cafeteria environment. So it'll be good to see that.
Anything else on LMS? Any questions on LMS?
No, I think we're ready to move on to GMS discussion, and with that, the consolidation study that's been proposed and what that will look like.
So Doug and I have had a conversation with Kyle Barker, who is the architect for the GMS project. We've also involved Dave Ely, who is the owner's rep for that project, and shared, Dan was in a call with them also. Tina was in a portion of the call, but shared that the community, through board members, have asked us to consider another option. And I'm gonna see if I can capture the option in its fine details. And then I think we wanna spend time really making sure that we know what we're asking Kyle to get back to us on, right? So the basic concept is to consolidate the school district to 2 sites. And the 2 sites would be the Campbell property and the LMS property. Conceptually, what we've heard is if we build a 7th and 8th grade addition onto Campbell, which sort of involves connecting the 2 wings where the SAU office is and like the consumer, or the Unified Arts wing, right? So wood shop and the cooking lab. If you connect those 2 wings, you could do 4 classrooms downstairs and 4 classrooms upstairs, so it would be a 2-story building that would tie in very nicely with the building. When it's all done, you probably wouldn't even know it wasn't part of the original building. And then we would have to study what else about Campbell would we need to make sure that our students had for a comfortable space in the building. So, you know, question marks that are out there are, do you need a second gymnasium, a smaller gymnasium? What kind of gymnasium, if any? Where will the students eat lunch? Should there be a multi-purpose room? Or would you somehow add on to the cafeteria that's there, or segment off the cafeteria that's there in order to make sure that the younger students are not mingled in with the older students for eating? And are there other needs? Are there like office needs, counseling needs, et cetera, that would need to be incorporated into that wing? And what would it cost to build that wing onto the building? So that's the first concept. So then you can just do simple math. You're taking 2 grades out of the middle school, so 7th and 8th grade come up to the high school. That means automatically we can pull 3rd and 4th grade from Griffin up the hill into the existing middle school. So then the next question that was asked of us is, if you add on to the middle school and build a pre-K, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade classroom space and whatever else they would need, you know, what would it cost to do that on that campus? And preliminary conversation, there's restrictions. You can't really go
Up.
You can't go up. You can't go left or right very easily on the building as you look at it, because the property line is very tight on the dumpster side, for lack of a better way to describe it. The property line is very tight there. You might be able to do something in that lawn space there, but it would really create no green space on that side of the building. There's some wetlands on the other side of the building that would make it difficult to work with. And the place that it seems like you could add is to come off the front of the building with an addition that would include those other grades. And Dan, if I'm thinking right, it's 2 pre-K classrooms, 4 kindergarten, 4 first, 4 second. You would want some flex space.
Well, I mean, with the new, when we came up with the schematic plans for the new building, we're basically saying 9 rooms per pair of grade levels. That way you can always have that bumped 5th room, because we kind of run around 4, but we always have that 1/5. So I know that the design shows there's like, between 1st and 2nd grade, there are 9 rooms. And it's also close because kindergarten sometimes floats up to 5 as well. But if you go with a strict 4 per, we're going to run into some issues in some years.
When you hit a big class,
Yeah.
where are they
And
going?
in my 3 years, we've always had at least one that's running at 5, as we do right now. Sometimes we had 2 running at 5.
So that's the basic concept that's been asked of us. And Kyle's asked for curriculum room building use numbers for the high school, which we'll get to him, for the middle school, which we'll get to him. And then he's gonna cost that out. And, you know, we're talking this many square feet, and what that would end up costing roughly, just so that we have some numbers to be able to bring that option back and let people know that we explored it.
How many rooms right now at the high school could be utilized by someone else, not the high school?
Can I just talk about the elephant in the room for a minute? When we proposed sending the 8th grade up to the high school last spring, that was met with great resistance by many, both at the high school and at the middle school. We had 4 classrooms that would have displaced high school teachers into floating locations that we could utilize temporarily on I think we talked about 3 to 4 months. I just want to throw that back out there because I know that was met with significant opposition in the springtime. I just feel like I have to say that.
I get that, but there's also a lot of classes have been dropped at the high school. The number of students in the high school continues to go down. So there has to be, right now, space in the high school that if you consolidated or moved rooms around, that you would have additional rooms. I'm only asking that, because then they can be utilized for either admin rooms, if you need a sped room, if you need the possibility of building another dining room. I think one thing you ought to be looking at is, there are other districts that have a 7 through 12. So how do they do it? I don't think every one of those schools has 2 gyms. I don't think they all have 2 CAFs. I think they utilize the space they have and, coordinate it that way. My first thought was, especially when we're talking LMS, I thought we could build up in the back. Is that not true, Dave? I thought that roof was built to be able to build up.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
We can
We're gonna have solar panels up there.
Well, I know, you can put solar panels on the 2nd floor, but a bigger concern is, there's not that much space, the entranceway. Okay, you're already talking a few $1 million anyway to build a road, because you would have to have an access road. I can't believe that you get a building permit that would put more kids up there and allow you to just have that one egress. The other is, it's helter-skelter already at GMS for pickup. I can imagine you put those kids, so you'd have to build out, but it's a site work you'd have to do too, like going towards GMS, as far as building a new parking lot, building a drop-off
Playground.
playground. So, those are all things that have to be considered also once you're bringing them up there.
And handicapped accessibility, that's one of the things that we looked at this year.
Yeah.
If you look at coming from the handicap spots in the LMS lot to the front door, it's a grade, what did we figure out the grade was, 12 feet, 18 feet?
Oh, it's
It's up there.
It's not easy to push a wheelchair and up that hill. It is a hike.
So I don't think it's just the space being built, but it's also all the rest of the site work, especially at LMS, that would be required.
We talked about that because we have to do site work anyways. The underground drainage system is failing, and so that has to be resolved. So you could do the addition sort of over that, just replace what's under there, and then bump out toward the wood line. There is space beyond the parking lot to add additional parking and playgrounds there. Because we actually measured, we could do a baseball field, a softball field, and a soccer field on the upper plateau.
Yeah.
So it's doable, but there will be site work in order to do it. And tying in the road so that there's emergency egress, we have a deed of right of way to do that, but that doesn't solve the day-to-day traffic of McElwain, right? You're still gonna have cars coming and going and turning off of that road, that we're gonna have to reckon with. And, you know, maybe the answer is like the different start times. You know, I know I'm giving a headache to the principal, but it's like, you know, the earlier grades start at one time so that you have one traffic pattern flow, and then the upper grades start at perhaps a different time. I'm not sure, but there's gotta be something to try to temper some of that traffic, because otherwise that is a boatload of people coming in and off of McElwain.
Kyle will definitely look into kind of possibly building up, but when we're bringing in K through 2, they come with different restrictions and different expectations as far as bathrooms, as far as square footage, as far as not even being on the second floor. So with those restrictions, it kind of makes sense maybe to
Right, but
build new,
right, you can always move fourth and fifth up, though.
you can move fourth and fifth if you added
And then
bathrooms.
retrofit what they've just, you'd have to retrofit all the improvements that they've just.
If you can build up. For some reason, I thought at one time someone said you could. But Dave, you would know, because you've been doing it longer than me.
I thought we asked that question, and Dave Ely came back and said no to that. So, but we'll make sure that we know the answer to it.
So you must already know what you need for square footage for those grades, correct?
Yeah, I mean,
Kyle should already have that
it's,
information.
there's state requirements for,
But I'm thinking like the physical therapy room and like all the
Yeah.
other rooms that you need.
yeah.
He must already have that in the concept of,
Yep.
Yep.
On the same discussion, does the SAU office stay at Campbell? And, you know, we basically occupy one half of a wing, and does it make sense to perhaps use that for counseling and administration of the middle school or the junior high, and have us move out of that building? And if so, where would we go? It has been suggested that the kindergarten portables would then become available with all of this, and we could figure out where they should be sited. They don't have to stay where they
Right.
currently are, so we could move those to another location and repurpose those into a district office scenario, so. But, I'll say that, but I also say they're really intended to be temporary solutions. It shouldn't become the new home of the SAU necessarily, so it's, you know, just another thing to think about as we try to figure this out.
and I know that was mentioned at the school board meeting also, as far as taking the SAU out to utilize those as classrooms. But there's not that much square footage in the admin area, is there?
You're saying where the SAU office is now?
Yeah.
So, basically, there are 3 smaller classrooms. The old boardroom is a smaller classroom. Next to it is where
Right,
special
that's
ed
being
is.
utilized as a classroom right now. It's not being utilized by the SAU.
It's being used by the SAU now. That's like the conference room space.
I'm thinking of where we used to have our meetings.
The red room in the back, we swapped that off. So we're no longer in the
Oh, right
back.
across from the office.
Yeah, we're at the
Yes.
back there, we're not off the library anymore. We don't use that room 42 anymore.
Right. The school does.
Yeah. And so we're using that front 128 space. And then next to it, which is special ed, there's a temporary wall that divides that. That's really a small learning space with a temporary wall that you could take down overnight and open back up. And then the same for where Doug's office is. That's a temporary wall that was dividing a small classroom. So you do have 3 small classrooms there, and then beyond it are all the smaller offices, which were designed for like testing, and you could easily have an assistant principal for the middle school in there. You could easily have a
Counselor.
a school counselor in there, a social worker. I mean, they could easily operate out of those spaces. And then in looking at other schools that have done this, I think you're spot on about the second gym cafeteria. We have to explore exactly how other schools do it, and there are plenty of examples out there. They also tend to have a separate entrance for the 7th and 8th grade. So, Bedford has the extreme example where the high school and the middle school are connected, but they are literally sealed off from each other than a gym wall that can be expanded into a massive gym, because it's 2 gyms when you expand it. And then there's a secret doorway that very few people can get through.
And a shared kitchen,
And a shared kitchen.
but separate cafeterias.
So one massive kitchen in the middle serving high schoolers here and middle schoolers there. So, but that was a cost savings to have one kitchen operation for them.
Yeah, going back to,
Yeah.
Heidi, what you said as far as, parents were in an uproar. I think that was like a one-off though, that was like, it's their 8th grade, and now you're taking them away from all the rest of their peers and bring them up to another school, rather than going forward, you would have 7th and 8th up there. So actually their school would be Campbell. Once you graduate from the K through,
6.
K6.
K to 6. So it's only 2 schools. And so I can see where, a child's been in the same school for the past 3 years, and all of a sudden here it is the 4th year, and they want to celebrate everything, and they're being pulled out. So I think it's a little different, with the concept of 7, 8. It's no different than the busing. No one said peep about putting middle school and high school together.
I don't know that that's true either.
Yeah, there's been peeps.
There's been lots of
but-
peeps.
There might have been a couple of peeps, but it wasn't much, not what we thought would happen.
Either way, I think it's important that as we continue to do this work, we kind of follow what we did last year with the community, when we looked at the 5 options, because they weren't as, like, right now we're talking about this, we're having Kyle do the study to answer the question, can we do this? Well, all 5 of the options, the answer to can we do this was yes. We did a full pro-con list to say we could do this, but is this what we want to do? And so I think we need to go through that process and whatever that looks like, so we can weigh out all of the factors, not just ability to do it, but rather, is this what's best for Litchfield? Is this what the town wants? Is this what's best for the students? Is this the future of education in Litchfield? And look at those pros and cons, because if you go back to the feasibility study and they talk about all 5 of the options, none of them were, it's impossible to do this. They were all possible. It was trying to find what the ideal was. And so I want to make sure that is the conversation, not just, I came up with architecture plans and I can pull it off.
And I won't say it's the only piece, but I think a large piece of this is being billed as a way to save money on a new school. And so if we actually price this out, what the addition is to Campbell, and price it out what the addition is to LMS in order to consolidate to these 2 schools, is there actually any savings, and what does that look like?
Well, and I was going to add on to that. Let's say there is savings. Where's the threshold of that we're better off, right? We're better off with a brand new
Exactly.
school. Is it 3 million? Is it 5 million? If it's only $5 million and you can build another school with anticipation, I know, right now enrollment's declining, but every time you turn around, they're building another street.
I also have to just speak for the trees a little bit about what the middle school purpose is. It's that transition time. And by going from an elementary to a junior high school model, you're cutting out the middle school experience at all. Not that other schools haven't done that, but there is a school out there that says that that's a developmentally important time for kids to have that separation and development. As we know, our kids go from 5th grade to 8th grade through a very significant process, and I want to make sure we're thinking educationally.
And I think that's a good point, but I think that rides on what Dan is saying, that maybe there's 3, 4, 5, possibilities and what's right and what's wrong. I'm not saying, what you're saying is not, it speaks volumes, but, and again, there's another element that we have
Correct.
to look at.
I just don't want it to be a price conversation. I want it to be a
Yeah.
whole, as we did last year when we did this, we looked at option 1 and we said, all right, everyone, what are the pros, what are the cons? Option 2, what are the pros, what are the cons? This is option 6, and once it comes up, you also, I think, need to have what are the pros and what are the cons? And one of those factors is that you lose the concept of middle school. You blend 7th and 8th graders from 9th to 12th. Flip side, you
Yeah.
now blend 6th graders with pre-K and kindergarten. You know, and I will tell you in my experience, like, I've said that I've never gone K to 6, but I've worked in K through 5. I've worked in a K through 5 school. And I will tell you that grade 5 seems really young to start middle school at the beginning of the year, but at the end of the year, grade 5 is really old to still be in elementary school. You know, that's just the reality of what grade 5 is. And so what's having grade 5 and 6 mixed in with kindergarten and first grade look like just as much as 7 and 8, because that's where the new blend happens. So I think we just need to have not just Kyle run the numbers and come up with the plans, but I think it's a chance to have an honest conversation about what that looks like for the town.
And I think that's also an important place that we include the teachers in the conversation, as we talked about earlier.
But that's not Kyle's, gig. He's just gonna give you numbers and square footage and,
No, I think he's gonna do more than that. I think as he developed what could be the elementary school, he really listened to what Litchfield wanted, and
Right.
it looks that
No, but
way.
I'm
And
saying-
as he's looking to prepare this, he asked for the program of studies, because the program of studies is different from Litchfield compared to if he's developing because I think he is doing a 7th through 12th grade school someplace else, but it depends on what our kids are studying, what electives they have, and how you're gonna put that together into a school that works too. So I think he does have some of that, definitely has that knowledge and is bringing in the right information, but I think it's why it might be important to kind of grow this committee too, so we make sure we have all those voices there.
Well, and I think, and I'm not spending the school board's money at all. So, but I mean, the authorization was for 10,000, and I don't think the work that Kyle's going to do may cost. I don't know if it's going to cost $10,000, but I think this may be an opportunity. The work hasn't involved it, but this is where Suzanne really kind of came in, and so we have that money. If there's a way that, because Suzanne basically led those conversations and kind of led us through that process to get us that all information. I'm wondering a conversation with Kyle of reinitiating with Suzanne to do some of that work. Since she did it with options 1 through 5, and if we want to follow the model, because we're basically taking option 6 and adding it to the work that we've already done, then I think we should have option 6 go through the kind of same process that options 1 through 5 went, and maybe reinitiating some work with Suzanne.
isn't the first step though, and that was the point I was trying to make as far as Kyle, that just, first we're looking at cost, correct? I mean, because I think as far as going to the studies and having Suzanne like go into the whole thing, and same thing with Kyle, you're gonna be talking, another big portion of money as far as doing studies and that. I thought the first step was, can you build it and what's it gonna cost?
Yeah, and I think you brought up earlier too, and what's that point does make sense to explore it more or less. Like if it's only gonna cost $1 million or $2 million less, do you really want to explore that, or you
Right.
want to move forward just with the new school on a new property type of thing? So yeah, get that cost first and then see where that brings you.
Well, and in the meantime, I also think this is a really big change in approach from where we've been in terms of, I feel like the conversation has been building a new elementary school. Consolidation is a completely different approach, and I don't know that we've heard from the public on that either. There are a lot of families at GMS, LMS, and CHS that may weigh in on that and say, I would rather spend a little bit more money to
Right.
have this be. And so hearing that feedback as well, when we did those community sessions and this option 6 wasn't even, on the radar, it was, do we build a new school and where? Kind of were the options. So I would be very curious to hear where people are. Not that we necessarily decide by survey, but I think it would be telling to find out where parents are.
So we will engage with Kyle. He is doing the 7th and 8th grade addition to Trinity High School, so he's designing that. And they're looking to bring the middle school of St. Joe's, I guess, to the Trinity campus. So he's involved in that work. I will tell you that this goes way back when we were first exploring all our options. I had a very in-depth conversation with Steve Chamberlain, who Steve taught at Hopkinton Middle High School, which is 7 to 12. Then he was principal there, and then he became superintendent. And I said, walk me through, what are the pros and cons? There are a lot of pros that need to be shared with people, because you have advanced middle schoolers who have access now to advanced coursework at the high school because it's down the hall, it's there. You're not trucking them across town in order to access and to accelerate studies and so forth. So there are some options that can work. Look at our language program. If you have, and the music program, if you have the ability for everything to be in one building and to share those services, it does have pros that can come with it. So, those are the things that we need to make sure that people understand. And then we just, again, put it out there and see what the community feedback is and decide where to head. There will be some dollars and cents assigned to it because that's what people will do, but and we have to make a decision. And what I think is important is that we do this work quickly. It's almost May. If the answer is design the new school on the new site, if that's where we fall back to, we've got a lot of work to do before a March vote. And we can't take this question and drag it through fall, because then we're going to lose momentum toward wherever we land, right?
Right.
Or if this is what gets traction and we have to pursue this, that becomes the bond question for March, and so we have to get after that.
It's also important to compare apples and apples. We have a request for a new school and we have an estimate of approximately 35, 36 million is what we're anticipating. That number is how old at this point? 6 months old?
More than that.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to now we're gonna have a new number is that number still valid? Is that number, because of building cost increases and where, inflation and whatnot, is that still so we can compare these two? But the longer it takes to do it, the further apart your data is.
Right. So this committee knows, I had a conversation with Amy Clark at the state because I had a concern. So we've been we've qualified for building aid. And so I said, if we come up with a whole new plan here, because that was based upon the project proposal that we had, right? So I said, what's going to happen? And she said, well, we will have to reevaluate it against the points that you were awarded for fixing the problems at GMS. So as long as you resolve every problem that was articulated at GMS with whatever you come up with, then you still qualify for that. They don't really care how we solve the problem. We just have to solve the problem. So, for example, one of the problems at GMS is traffic. So whatever we come up with has to resolve traffic, because you can't just move the traffic problem somewhere else in town. You have to solve the traffic problem. So just keep that in mind as we work through it.
Can I throw something out there too? Because people are gonna ask, and they have been asking. As far as the old GMS, if the plan comes up that you're gonna build a new school over here, you're gonna consolidate over there, when do the bulldozers come in just to level that thing? Because is it worth trying to sell? Is it worth trying to do anything with?
One of the things that Bonnet Page and Sohn has said to us is that having an answer to what you're going to do with the old school will be helpful to voters, because they want to know.
Right.
They don't want to approve doing something new and have a lingering problem on their hands. So I think we have to
I'm putting it out
figure
there
that
to have
out.
discussion, and I think when the presentation's made as far as here's our options, it's gonna come up. What are you gonna do with the old GMS?
Yep. I mean, the community's expressed a lot of interest in the 1930s building, and so I think we would have to say, somebody has to take that on and say, here's what we want to do with that, because it resides on school district property right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we would have to have an answer to that, and then, is there somebody with an idea about the rest of the building? Or if not, how do we turn that over to some other use down there? I don't know. But you're right, Brian, it's got to be figured out.
You know, I don't know if it could be utilized as rental, if you can put the SAU in there instead of the portables, sell the portables, you know, reconfigure some of the classrooms as far as the offices, build some bathrooms. I'm not sure what the usage could be.
Rec center.
Yeah, a recreational,
A town rec center of some kind. I don't know.
bingo hall.
Yeah. Who knows? But you're right, it's a question that needs to be answered and plays into the equation.
This town seems to keep taking their old buildings and just let them sit there. What do we do with the old firehouse? I don't know.
Storage. Everything
Again,
becomes,
maybe that's what GMS could be used for, storage.
that's what the 30s building is. It's our closet at the moment. It's like, yeah.
It's the least humid spot of the entire building.
Yeah.
Anything else about, so I'm just gonna say out loud, we had talked about some other possibilities, but the board directed us back to this one. And I just wanna say it out loud here because I think everybody should know that we had other dialogue. Moving 7th and 8th grade to the high school is part of all of them. In addition to adding on to LMS out front, which is sort of where you're limited to do the work, the question became, could you somewhere on that property build a separate PK to 2 building? So not necessarily attached, but could it be sited somewhere else and on that property? So that was one option. The other is, do you do everything we've talked about, but then build the PK to 2 building on the new property across the street here? So that defeats the purpose of consolidating, but you would have a much smaller school built across from the fire station. And the other scenario was, do we go back to having a PK to 2 presence at the existing GMS site? So you tear down the worst parts of the building, renovate the best parts of the building, and can you make it work with 3 grades there?
Dan, what is the best part of GMS?
The portables.
Portables. I mean,
And I think the answer to the PK to 2, and Kyle could probably give you the answer real quick. I mean, probably the same answer as far as a PK to 4 on the LMS site. That you're wetter up there than you were down below. You have a leach field problem as far as now you're extending the leach field, which may be one part of the problem too as far as extending there. Because the leach field probably won't handle, well, no, because you're losing 2 classes, right? But you're still gaining a couple. So-
The leach field will have to have attention
Yeah.
to it.
So you get the road, you get the leach field, but I mean, that was one of the options to begin with, and it was shot down because, as far as the wetlands up there, it's wetter, and then trying to tie in 2 leach fields, it just wasn't really feasible.
And the other thing, and I looked at the camera last Wednesday, I'm gonna look at the camera today. If there's anybody else with another idea, now is the time to bring it up. Like, if you have some other concept of how we could proceed ahead, because what I don't think will be acceptable is a question in September, have you considered this? And it'll be something new, because at that point, it's like, we just need to get moving on a plan, and we can't keep going back. I think exploring option 6 makes sense. And if there's somebody in the public who feels, I think I just gave 7, 8, and 9, now would be your chance to engage the board and say, whoa, wait a second, you're not thinking your way through this. We think exploring some of the other options makes sense, but the board really anchored back to 2 sites. And although the board didn't grab onto the possibility of personnel savings that come with this, there are some possible personnel savings that are there also. Like, if you have 2 buildings, would you need 3 principals? Would you need 3 assistant principals? Do you need 3 food service leads? Do you need 3 custodial leads? Do you need 3 librarians? Do you need 3 nurses? And I'm just saying all that out loud because eventually consolidating does mean examining the personnel and the staffing and making sure that we have the right people doing the job that needs to be done. And so there are some potential savings down the road.
I think they're minimal, though. I mean, you're consolidating, you still have the same amount of students. It's not to say that there may be a position here or there that you don't. So you think about the lead custodian. So you don't need 3 lead custodians, but now you're gonna need additional custodians probably at both schools, right? To
For more
do the
square
maintenance.
footage, yeah.
The nurse, you're probably gonna need a nurse and a half. because now you're gonna like double the students, or 1.5 times the students. So, yeah, there's potential savings, but I think those are minimal. Even like, and I think at the meeting you said it, like, that's not really what we're considering right now. Let's like get the footprint down, or the thought process, you know, what's gonna cost us, then you can look at the other part of it.
Do you need anything else from this group in terms of direction, or do you feel like you and Doug have what you need to work with Kyle?
I think we have what we need to work with Kyle, and you know, he's experienced and has done this, because some, you know, questions have been asked, like, has anybody done a building usage study? Well, that's what Kyle's gonna do. So, I'm getting for him the LMS master schedule in a spreadsheet, the CHS master schedule in a spreadsheet. He can quickly see, you know, how often is there a classroom not in use at LMS? I mean, you can measure that out and know what's available there. If it's been updated based on the end of construction, because during construction, there wasn't a spare inch in that building, I don't think, but,
What's the student count for PK to 2? 4, yeah, PK 3? PK 3,
PK to 3?
PK to 3.
so I'm gonna put the enrollment projections up there, Brian. So predicting for next year, it's 40 PK plus 71 in kindergarten, so,
111.
plus 72 and plus 85.
So
like
it's
260.
80.
260.
Usually.
And then you're gonna lose about 200, right? No, less than that.
Lose 200.
7th and 8th,
So 7th and 8th next year, 80 and 87.
60. So you gain 100 students.
And Campbell next year is at 394.
Well, no, I'm just wondering, like,
So,
how many additional students would be at LMS, but I mean, they've had that number before.
oh yeah.
Right, but the square, I mean, the number of grades.
Now, that, I was only thinking as far as traffic,
Okay,
because, I mean, if you're adding like 250 on top of what they normally have, then,
You're basically making two schools of 6 to 650.
Which is a larger elementary school.
Yeah.
In New Hampshire. There are larger elementary schools that exist, but,
no, I was thinking simply for traffic.
Yep.
And, you know, how the fire department, police department would look at that much additional traffic down that road, whether or not, you know, they would sign off on it.
I mean, you know what Elmas pickup is every day. Can you imagine adding GMS to
That's
that?
what I'm saying. And again, you'd have to probably look at, you know, different start times. You have different start times now,
Yeah,
but, oh, my God.
Or we'd have to look at a second lane of traffic going around the building, and then you're
to be.
worried about kids getting run over by people in a hurry going in and out at that age.
I just remember going to LMS open houses and literally parking all the way onto Pinecrest, like up and down the whole road. I mean, there just isn't the space. You'd have to divide all of those
I should
up.
have just stayed at GMS.
I almost got run over in that.
that has to be addressed.
It has
I
to.
mean, the parking lot is so undersized there,
Yeah.
and we absolutely have to address that.
What
Because
is
you
it?
can't, parking there. I mean, you just have to have more spaces available
At LMS.
at LMS.
Yeah, because you're gonna have how many more teachers driving and parking there? That lot's gonna need to be bigger. I mean, it just, in general.
Yeah, they won't have 3A to park on anymore.
All right, so you have what you need. That's the last thing on the agenda. I'll open it up, I guess, to any other issues anyone wants to raise regarding facilities. All right, seeing none.
So our next meeting, I just want to make sure that we all have this on our calendar. The way these are set up in here, it's like, there's two different meeting invites. So the 10th of May is our next meeting. And before I leave this seat today, I'm going to do an update to the meeting invite, because they were set up as the first meeting of the month and the second meeting of the month, so I can't update them in one spot. So I'll update this. I would expect that Kyle, I believe Kyle and Dave can join us there, and he may have some preliminary information when we get back to him from here. I don't don't hold your breath waiting for that information, but it may be more of a workshop session of what are the pros, what are the cons, like, we need to articulate that as he's putting some numbers and so forth to it.
You
So
think it's gonna take Kyle that long to get numbers?
I think he can get the numbers done more quickly, but I think the feedback on what are the pluses and minuses, we should probably plan to do at that meeting. I don't think
But-
it's,
I don't know if you thought maybe it'd be wise, like, if we have the numbers sooner, that we meet before then to like at least, you know, because again, you talk about getting it out there as soon as possible. And right now, you're talking like another month away before we even have the next one, but if we can get the numbers, say, within 2 weeks, even if it's just a short meeting, it's like, okay, here are the numbers.
Probably that's vacation.
school vac,
We have next week, which is school board, vacation, school board, and then it's actually the next available Wednesday, right?
it is, unless we met right before the board. So if we need to meet sooner, Brian, we'll get an invite out.
Okay.
I think school vacation is what is goofing us up. Or actually, yeah, anyway.
All right. Then I think we're done
Yeah.
for today.
That's it. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Two.
Thank you.